Welcome back to the 7th and final part of the Ultimate Gnosticism Iceberg series. If you missed the last videos that cover the first 6 tiers, you may want to go check that out in the playlist I have linked in the description. This is an iceberg that I created myself, and you can download it on my website, which there's a link to in the description as well. But now we're diving deeper into the last tier of the iceberg, the void. At this level, Gnosticism becomes a cosmic struggle, where reality is a deception so deep that even enlightenment may be another trap. These ideas push beyond hidden knowledge into fragments of forbidden esoteric practices and unsettling implications about the nature of existence itself. Here we are no longer just questioning history or religion. We are questioning whether anything we perceive is real at all. But real quick before we get started, if you like this type of content, then please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss a future video. Alright, let's dive in. First up is Aleister Crowley's Gnostic Mass. Aleister Crowley, the notorious occultist and founder of Thelema, wove Gnostic elements into his rituals, most famously in the Gnostic Mass, the central rite of the Ordo Templi Orientis. Officially called Liber 15, the Mass blends Gnostic cosmology, ceremonial magic, and sexual mysticism, creating a ritual that both mirrors and subverts the traditional Christian Eucharist. The ceremony involves 5 key officers, a priest, a priestess, a deacon, and 2 acolytes, with a Eucharist as the ritual's climax. The structure includes an invocation of Thelemic deities, a symbolic resurrection of the priest by the priestess, the rending of the veil, 11 prayers, the consecration of the Eucharist, and the final proclamation of divine unity, where the congregation declares, "There is no part of me that is not of the gods." One of the more controversial aspects of the Mass is its sacred Eucharist, which is meant to charge participants with divine energy. This mirrors ancient Gnostic initiations, where consuming sacred foods was believed to facilitate spiritual transformation. The Eucharist consists of wine and the cake of light, which is made of flour, honey, abramelin oil, olive oil, bee swing, and bodily fluids, such as those that come from a man or a woman. Yes, those ones. The Eucharist is seen as a vessel of magical power, drawing from alchemical and tantric traditions that use the body's substances as conduits for spiritual energy. The ritual space includes 4 key elements: a high altar, an altar of incense, a font, and a tomb, symbolizing different mystical forces. The Mass blends ceremonial magic, sex magic symbolism, and elements of Gnostic thought, aiming to elevate participants into spiritual ecstasy while affirming their divine nature through the mysteries of Thelema. For Crowley, Gnosis wasn't just about intellectual enlightenment, it was something visceral, ecstatic, and deeply embodied. He believed in achieving higher states of consciousness through ritual, sex magic, and direct communion with higher intelligences. The Gnostic Mass reflects this by rejecting the idea of external salvation and instead focusing on awakening the divine within. The Mass is structured around invocations, symbolic gestures, and a transmission of hidden knowledge, echoing the traditional Gnostic sacraments, but framed within the Thelemic worldview of the Aeon of Horus. The Aeon of Horus, as described by Aleister Crowley, represents an age of self-realization, spiritual awakening, and individual will or thelema, moving beyond the past ages of Isis and Osiris, representing maternal worship and self-sacrifice respectively. Crowley claims this new era is marked by the conquering child, symbolizing growth in consciousness and mastery over fear, death, and rational limitation. He asserts that thelema is a revolutionary word akin to the teachings of Buddha and Muhammad, fundamentally reshaping religious, philosophical, and scientific understanding. At its core, the Gnostic Mass embodies Crowley's belief that Orthodox Christianity strips spirituality of its true ecstatic nature, replacing mystical experiences with rigid doctrine and dogmatic control. Like the Gnostics before him, Crowley saw mainstream religion as an oppressive force that disconnected people from direct spiritual knowledge. By incorporating Gnostic ideas into ceremonial magic, the Ordo Templi Orientis sought to reclaim lost mystical wisdom, placing the individual at the center of their own divine awakening, where enlightenment wasn't granted by a church, but achieved through will, ritual, and personal experience. Whether or not that is achieved by these rituals is up for debate. Next up we have Earth is a soul farm. A radical interpretation of Gnostic cosmology suggests that Earth isn't just a false reality, it's a literal soul farm, where human consciousness is harvested and recycled by the Demiurge or Archons. In this view, suffering isn't just an unfortunate part of existence, it's the fuel that keeps the system running. Human souls are trapped in an endless cycle of reincarnation, their memories wiped clean each time, ensuring they never progress beyond the material prison. Rather than living freely, humanity functions as a spiritual resource, feeding non-physical entities that thrive on fear, pain, and ignorance. Some versions of this theory argue that the entire reincarnation process is a carefully managed system designed to prevent escape. Souls are sent back into the cycle over and over, unable to remember past lives, forced to keep generating emotional energy that is absorbed by parasitic entities beyond human perception. Think the Matrix. Reports from near-death experiences sometimes describe a tunnel of light leading back to reincarnation, but some who have had these experiences recall an eerie sense of coercion, like they were being guided back into the trap. The control mechanisms of this reality, according to the proponents of this idea, operate on multiple levels. Biological constraints like aging, disease, and physical needs keep people focused on survival, while societal structures, religion, government, financial systems ensure that humanity remains distracted, divided, and dependent. The concept of louche, a term popularized by Robert Monroe, refers to emotional energy harvested by non-physical entities, which fits with the idea that the Demiurge and his Archons feed off the suffering generated by human existence. In this interpretation, the Archons aren't just jailers, they're predators, actively manipulating human perception, emotions, and even thoughts to prevent people from realizing their divine origins. The Marsanes, one of the most obscure texts from the Nag Hammadi library, aligns with this unsettling perspective. It describes the material world as an intentional psychological and spiritual prison, where human perception is actively distorted to prevent enlightenment. Unlike other Gnostic texts that focus on cosmology or divine origins, Marsanes is deeply philosophical, dealing with consciousness itself, how it's manipulated, and how it can be freed. The text presents the mind as a battlefield, where external forces shape thought and perception to keep souls blind to their true nature. It describes multiple levels of spiritual ascent, but warns that each level is guarded by deceptive entities whose role is to convince the seeker that they have found the ultimate truth when they have not. This reinforces the idea that the Demiurge and his Archons create layers of false enlightenment, traps within traps, to keep even the most spiritually inclined souls contained within the system. Some interpretations of Marsanes suggest that the universe is multi-layered, with each higher level being a more refined illusion, meaning that even those who believe they've escaped the Demiurge's world may still be within his system. The only true way out, according to the text, is to go beyond thought itself, into a state of pure awareness that transcends all perception and illusion. It's a bleak but deeply profound vision of existence, one in which human consciousness is ensnared in an endlessly deceptive system, where every attempt to break free is met with more layers of illusion. But Marsanes doesn't just present the prison, it hints at a way out. If the illusions can be silenced, if the layers of deception can be stripped away, there is something beyond the Demiurge's world. If this interpretation is correct, then Marsanes isn't just another Gnostic text. It's a guide for those seeking to break free from the soul farm and awaken to their true, unbounded consciousness. Next, we have Sethianism as an ancient pre-Demiurgic religion. A fringe theory suggests that Sethianism isn't just an early Gnostic tradition, it's a remnant of a cosmic religion that predates the creation of the material world itself. In this view, Sethian teachings existed before the Demiurge corrupted reality, meaning Sethian Gnosis isn't simply an esoteric rebellion against a false god, but the last surviving fragment of an older, pure cosmic order, one that existed before the fall into matter. This interpretation suggests that the Sethian mysteries were once part of a divine system of knowledge established by higher aeonic beings before the material universe even came into existence. If the Demiurge's creation was an act of theft, stealing divine energy to fashion a counterfeit world, then Sethian teachings serve as an encoded memory of the original cosmic harmony that was lost. In this view, the true history of existence has been erased and overwritten by the Demiurge's illusion, and Sethianism represents the last attempt to preserve the knowledge of what came before. According to this theory, the world we inhabit is not merely a flawed creation of the Demiurge, but a counterfeit of a higher perfect reality. In this original divine world, human souls existed in fully realized forms, completely connected to the divine source. Unlike the more common Gnostic perspective that describes the human soul as containing only a small divine spark trapped within the material realm, this theory suggests that souls were originally whole, divine beings who lived in a perfect version of our material reality. It was only through the Demiurge's interference that some were severed from their divine state and imprisoned in the flawed copy that we now perceive as reality. The creation of the material world was, in essence, an act of imitation. The Demiurge, incapable of true creation, sought to replicate the higher world, but did so imperfectly, producing a distorted, fragmented version. Some of the divine beings from the true world were drawn into this false material realm, carrying with them the divine knowledge of Seth. These beings, though trapped, retain the awareness of their divine origins and serve as guides, attempting to awaken the divinity in others. Their mission is to remind those trapped in the Demiurge's world that their reality is a deception and that beyond it lies the true, uncorrupted existence. This interpretation of Sethianism claims that it predates the Demiurge's existence because it originates in the perfect world that the Demiurge attempted to copy. The true Sethian knowledge in this view is not a reaction to the Demiurge's flawed creation, but a remnant of a divine tradition that existed before the Demiurge even came into being. This perspective also aligns with certain Platonic ideas, particularly the notion that our world is an imperfect copy of higher realms of forms. However, it takes this idea further by suggesting that the Demiurge did not merely create a flawed reflection out of ignorance, but did so deliberately to deceive and ensnare souls. If this theory holds, then the goal is not just to escape the material world, but to restore the knowledge of the original divine existence that existed before the Demiurge's interference. Next up we have reptilians or archons. David Icke's conspiracy theories take the Gnostic concept of the archons in an unexpected direction, arguing that they aren't just spiritual or psychological forces, but literal shape-shifting reptilian beings who hold positions of power on Earth. According to Icke, these reptilian archons control governments, financial institutions, religious organizations, and media networks, keeping humanity locked in a low vibrational state of fear, division, and ignorance. His theory blends Gnostic cosmology, ancient astronaut ideas, and modern conspiracy narratives, recasting the Demiurge and his archons as an extraterrestrial ruling class that manipulates human perception and behavior from the shadows. Ike claims that these beings don't exist within the visible spectrum of reality, but in an interdimensional or extra-dimensional state. They supposedly maintain control through bloodline elites, secret societies, and occult rituals, feeding off human suffering, fear, and emotional turmoil, an idea that echoes the Gnostic belief that the archons thrive on ignorance and illusion, keeping human souls trapped in the material world. Some interpretations of this theory link these reptilian archons to ancient mythologies and religious traditions, pointing to serpent and dragon-like deities in Sumerian, Babylonian, and Mesoamerican cultures. Figures like the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the Anunnaki of Mesopotamian myth, and the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl have all been cited as possible representations of these beings, reinforcing the idea that reptilian entities have been influencing human civilization for thousands of years. Supporters of Ike's theory believe there are signs of reptilian control hidden in plain sight, particularly in elite institutions that use serpent imagery, hidden hand gestures, and secretive initiation rituals. They argue that historical ideas like divine right, royal bloodlines, and rulers claiming descent from the gods all hint at a hidden lineage of non-human overlords shaping human affairs. The idea that archons could be literal non-human beings rather than spiritual forces of oppression continues to circulate in esoteric and conspiracy circles. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, the idea of reptilian archons taps into deep anxieties about hidden power structures, control, and the true nature of human reality. Interestingly, the hypostasis of the archons, one of the most detailed Gnostic texts from the Nag Hammadi library, describes the Demiurge and his archons as monstrous, reptilian-like entities who rule over the material world. Unlike other Gnostic writings that describe the Demiurge in more abstract terms, this text gives a visceral, almost mythological depiction of the false creator, an image that aligns with modern interpretations of the Demiurge as an alien or non-human intelligence. In the hypostasis of the archons, the Demiurge is described as a lion-faced serpent with eyes like flaming fire, a chaotic and arrogant being who falsely claims to be the one true God, unaware of the higher divine realms beyond him. The archons themselves are depicted as grotesque beings of various monstrous forms. Some interpretations suggest that these descriptions could be early references to extraterrestrial or interdimensional entities, similar to the Anunnaki or the Jinn of Islamic tradition, suggesting that the archons may not just be metaphysical forces, but malevolent intelligences operating behind the scenes. This depiction of the Demiurge as a reptilian-like being with tyrannical ambitions resonates with modern conspiracy theories that see world leaders, corporate elites, and ruling families as either representatives or puppets of the archons. If the hypostasis of the archons describes the false god as a beast-like entity ruling over a prison world, then what does that say about those who wield power in his name? And lastly for this tier, and for the entire Ultimate Gnosticism Iceberg, we have Tantric New Gnosis. The international Gnostic movement, founded by Samuel Allen Weor in the mid-20th century, teaches that sexual energy is the key to spiritual enlightenment and a deeper form of gnosis. Blending Gnosticism with esoteric Christianity, alchemy, and tantric traditions, this movement sees sexuality not as something to be repressed, but as a divine force that, when properly harnessed, can open the gates to higher consciousness. Unlike traditional Christian teachings, which often associate sexuality with sin or temptation, modern Gnostic groups in this tradition believe that sexual union, when practiced correctly, can accelerate spiritual awakening. At the heart of Weor's teachings is the idea of sexual transmutation, a concept drawn from both Western alchemy and Eastern Tantra. Rather than seeking physical gratification, practitioners are encouraged to refine and direct this energy to awaken the divine spark within. Weor argue that orgasm leads to spiritual degeneration, while controlled and intentional sexual practice without the loss of energy can generate inner light and propel spiritual evolution. This idea closely resembles certain Hindu and Buddhist tantric traditions, which emphasize channeling this energy through meditation, breathwork, and sacred rituals to reach higher states of consciousness. In this interpretation, sexual alchemy is a way to reverse the fall into materiality described in Gnostic thought. The material world created by the Demiurge is a trap that imprisons divine sparks within human bodies. Traditional religious institutions, rather than offering true liberation, often reinforce this imprisonment through doctrines that promote sexual repression and guilt. The new gnosis taught by these groups proposes that sexuality isn't something to be denied. It's something to be transformed, serving as a pathway to reclaim lost divine power. One of the key practices in the international Gnostic movement is sacred sexuality, which is meant to be practiced within marriage or committed partnerships. According to Weor, through disciplined practice, couples can activate dormant spiritual centers, awaken Kundalini energy, and even experience direct communion with the Pleroma. This, he claimed, allows practitioners to bypass the control of the Demiurge and his archons, reclaiming their connection to higher dimensions of existence. Critics argue that these ideas stray far from classical Gnostic texts, where sexuality is often seen as part of the material entrapment of the soul, rather than a means of liberation. However, the international Gnostic movement claims that their teachings restore lost knowledge, a hidden path deliberately erased by the Church to keep humanity from realizing its divine power. Some speculate that early Gnostic groups, such as the Carpocratians and the Borborites, may have engaged in ritualized sexual practices. However, much of what is written about them comes from their critics, like Epiphanius of Salamis, who sought to portray them as heretical and immoral. Whether or not ancient Gnostics actually practiced sacred sexuality, the modern revival of sexual gnosis presents itself as a continuation of esoteric alchemy, arguing that by mastering sexual energy, practitioners can break free from the illusion of the Demiurge's world and return to the divine source. And that closes off the final tier of the ultimate Gnosticism iceberg. Thank you so much for sticking around this long. This video was a blast to make, so let me know what you thought. What topic interested you the most? And what do you think I should cover next on this channel? I would love to cover more esoteric traditions other than Gnosticism, but let me know what you're interested in. I look forward to reading through all your comments as always, and if you liked the video, please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Until next time.